Hello. I want to chat about the situation where we've just discovered that we've got ADHD and wondering whether we should share that at all. Do we share it with family, friends, or with our boss and co-workers? Um, when do we share it? How do we share it? Um, do we need to share it at all? Do we want to share it? Do we share it at all? Um, that's what I'd like to chat about today because that is can be tricky depending on who you're going to share it with or not. I don't think there is any one straightforward answer to that question particularly. Um, I don't think any answer is right or wrong either. Some people don't really believe, or they might feel uncomfortable about the concept of labeling ourselves. I think that is definitely a concern for probably us older ladies, us older people, because we come from an era where labeling or having a label was potentially used against us. So that can be uncomfortable. For people that are younger, I think it's starting to become a lot easier to not be so afraid of labels. I think the world is at large is in some ways becoming more open and more compassionate. In many other ways, not so, but that's for another conversation. Um, and so when it comes to discovering that we've got ADHD and then choosing to share or not to share, it may be easier for a younger generation. Um, I'm in my 40s, went to high school in the 90s. It was a time that if we found out that so and so at school had ADHD, which was heard of a lot in the 90s, not so much autism. Um, but yeah, ADHD was a thing you heard of, but there was always just that one person in the school or in the classroom who had it, or that one person who was known for their crazy antics. And it's like, oh, well, they have ADHD, they haven't had their meds yet. And it was something that was known of, but it was still a little stigmatized, I should say. I remember at my school there was a kid in the younger grades who just everybody knew he had ADHD, and he was known to be kind of like almost like the school clown. He was hilarious. He was funny. He was like always up to some silly antics, and he was well known. I went to a very small school, so it was probably quite easy to be well known, but um, he was well known, I guess, in a good way. And But also there was that sort of little giggle that sometimes you knew you had to have because he was just being silly, and it was always like, oh well, he has ADHD. Um, ADHD was known to be that thing that kids have when they're very, very hyperactive. It was not, I don't think, yet known that sometimes it's not physical hyperactivity, it's mental hyperactivity. So I think that sharing with your friends is probably a safe place to start, and I'll tell you why my opinion is such. I think that, we tend to flock to those who are similar to us in the first place. So there could be a high chance, or a medium chance, or some kind of a chance that if you share it with one of your friends that they have been diagnosed already or are on a journey of their own to discover their own ADHD, or other neurodivergence, because we do tend to become friends with those with whom we have things in common, right? Or common beliefs or common life experiences and such. So if you were to tell, like, at least your closest friend, if they're a good friend, they're going to love on you and support you anyway, even if they're not ADHD. But maybe they are and they don't know it. I was actually that friend that didn't know I had ADHD, and my a friend of mine was happily sharing her experience of having found along the journey of her life, her parenting life, that her children, because her children had both ASD and ADHD, she was beginning to suspect that she also had both. And she was at the time realizing that she was probably more ADHD than ASD. And anyway, I would hear her stories and her struggles and just be a listening friend. I was being very supportive, and I'd give her, like, I guess, examples of when a similar thing had happened to me. And I was simply just trying to be the supportive friend. That's all. I didn't know I was neurodivergent at all. And then about a year or two later, I discovered my own ADHD, and she was the first friend that I opened up to, because she definitely knew about it and what it could be like. And so I said to her, I think that I might be ADHD, you know? I was really like, I think I was being very tentative, precisely because she really knew that she was and her kids were. And I was like, I don't want to come at this family with, oh, I think I have ADHD, and just be totally off the mark. And she actually smiled real big at me and she said, congratulations. And it really took me by surprise. Like, it really did. I was like, oh. And she goes, that is so exciting. And I went, oh, thank you. And it just really, really surprised me. But I thought, oh, I'm in some kind of club now. And she gave me a hug and she looked at me with, like, I don't know, like love and acceptance. And she said, you know, you will be so thankful to have discovered this. She said, I'm so excited for you. And then she looked at me and she said, you know, I kind of suspected that you might be. And in fact, I thought that you were and that you knew that about yourself. And I'm like, no, I had no idea. I've just kind of come across it now. And so I got a sense of, I guess, support, and I got a sense of being seen and accepted by my closest friend, who was already already knew that she was ADHD. So that was my experience. However, I have since then, as time goes on, and I have become more and more confident about who I am and why I am the way I am, and that a lot of me actually comes down to having an ADHD brain. And I've shared with more and more friends that I have ADHD, and I've shared it quite confidently, and I have to say that it has really not surprised any of my friends. I think people can usually see that you're a bit different. And so it hasn't surprised any of my other friends. And in fact, several of my other friends have also said, yeah, I kind of think that I might be ADHD too. So, what has surprised me along the way is that for all the, I guess, lack of knowledge or lack of understanding out there in the world about ADHD and the different types of ADHD or the different ways in which it can show up or reveal itself with different people, um, at least my friends seemed to already be well versed in what it could be like to be a woman with ADHD. So that has been really surprising. I've had other friends go, oh, okay, well, what is that? Like, what does that mean? And I've shared just a few examples of how it can affect me in particular. And they've said, oh, yeah, like maybe I have it too because I struggle with that too. Um, Sometimes people will say, oh, but doesn't everybody struggle with that? Um, And when that happens to me, I go, well, yeah, that's true. And I kind of leave it at that because I think that they're not ready for the conversation or for me to delve in further about it. So I leave it at that. I think, therefore, that because I've had a generally positive experience with sharing it with my closest friends, that you might have a positive experience too. And that's probably a good place to start. Um, Sharing with family is a little bit different. I have found that, um, okay, I'm going to speak very generally about families, right? In any given family, we all have a different role to play, and when within any family unit, every person knows each other um, from that perspective. So you might have a brother and you know that your brother is a goofball who always forgets to bring something to the family dinner, even though he gets reminded again and again to bring that bottle of juice to the family dinner, right? I'm totally making this up. This has not happened in my family, but you just sort of kind of in families it's very easy for us to stereotype each other. It comes very naturally. We all know, for example, that the youngest of the lot is the, I don't know, adventurous traveler who takes life with a pinch of salt, right? Or we all know that mum is the one that's gonna cook the big dinner because that's just what mum does, and she will make sure to remind us all about our baby cousin's birthday and things like that, right? We kind of tend to understand each other, know each other as from those perspectives, from the roles that we play or the roles that we have um, within our family unit. And so if by any chance you happen to have the kind of role where you are the support person or you are the like a bit of a pillar in your family unit, people lean on you or count on you, or you're the reliable one, or you're the one that organizes the family gatherings, or any one of these kinds of um, tasks or roles that you might be um, known for in your family unit, it's gonna be hard for your family to then go, well, hang on, but you're the reliable one. How can you have ADHD? Or you're the organizer of our yearly, um, whatever, yearly thing that we do. How can you have ADHD? Or but we go to you for advice of how can you have ADHD, and there can be that kind of situation happen, and it might not be so easy for them to take it in that actually you have your struggles too. So I think that you may, I guess, need to keep that in mind, whether you have a little compassion for that person, that family member that you share it with, or whether you choose when to share it or if to share it. Like it really depends on what your relationship is with your family members, I think. For myself, I was surprised to learn that some of my some family members that I shared it with, they were like, oh well, yeah, I think I might have it. And so that was kind of heartwarming for me to go, oh, okay. The other thing that you might want to take into consideration when thinking about sharing it with family is, how will it help your family to share your diagnosis? I figured that if I could speak openly about my diagnosis with my family, first of all, it kind of went against the grain, because we never used to share, like with my family, we used to share openly about, I don't know, maybe annoyances or grievances, but not personal struggles. And I thought, I want to be the change. I want to just come outright and say, hey guys, I've been actually diagnosed with ADHD, and this is how it shows up in my life. And some family members would just sort of listen curiously from afar, and then others were like more curious, and actually ask questions. But I decided not only to try and be the change in that sense, I also decided that if I have it, then potentially my family members also have it. And if any of them are wondering whether they should go and get a diagnosis, or if they're feeling shame about this, then by me coming forward and being open about it, then perhaps I would be quietly lifting someone up and lifting them up to be open about who they think they might be. And sure enough, in the recent years, two family members have actually gone and spoken openly to health professionals about their suspicions, and have had some kind of confirmation that yes, they are likely on the ADHD spectrum. I personally call it a spectrum. I don't think it's known as a spectrum. I personally call the ADHD a spectrum as well, just because of how differently it can show up in different people. So if you think that it might be helpful, that might be something you'd like to take into consideration as well. When sharing it with your workplace, that I'm going to be pretty straightforward about my opinion on this one, because if your ADHD honestly does not get in the way of your performance at work, because you've been lucky enough to have found the job that you absolutely thrive in and you succeed in, there may not be a need for you to share it in your workplace. However, if it is affecting, if some of your ADHD symptoms really does affect some kind of aspect of your performance at work, I guess it depends on how severe it's affecting your performance at work. Then you definitely need to consider about whether you'd like to share it with your boss or the HR department, for example. I think it's important not only to speak with your boss, but also to the HR department if you work at a big enough company that has a HR department. I remember when I was in the workplace, I was thriving pretty well in a particular role because coffee helped a lot. um, and I was kind of like sort of top of the class, so to speak, in a way. The only reason why I say that is because lots of co-workers used to come to me for guidance and advice on what to do on the job, and so I thought, well, I must be doing all right if my co-workers are happy to come to me for help and support. But sadly, things got difficult when the company needed to cut back on losses, I guess, and the whole company got really strict, extremely strict on timekeeping, and timekeeping is not an ADHD strength. I didn't know I had ADHD at the time. All I knew was that I had some pretty defiant kind of attitudes towards timekeeping and the running of any clock, or living life by the clock. I even wrote songs about how I wasn't made for the 9 to 5 and things like that. But now that I know I have ADHD, I look back on all of those really awkward situations where I was actually getting pulled up about my timekeeping. I was always running late, and I was always sort of accidentally taking longer breaks than were due, because you lose sense of time with ADHD. I look back on all those difficult and awkward situations and go, if only I had known. I can hear my hubby just laughing his head off. Oh gosh. If only I had known, I might have been able to kind of stand up for myself. In saying that, I do have to say they were ever so kind and compassionate towards me and gave me lots of accommodations because they didn't really want to have to let me go. But unfortunately, none of the accommodations did help me at the time. Again, if I had have known about my ADHD, I might have been able to be a lot more compassionate even towards myself, and maybe the accommodations would have actually helped. So yes. So in the end, it did get to the point where they had to say, look, we've actually given you many warnings about sticking to your schedule, and if we have to speak to you one more time, things are going to get pretty bad. And I actually was burnt out. I had not taken any holidays, any time off in like a very long time. I had taken 1 week off for mental health reasons, and vertigo. It's sort of 12 months beforehand. And so by the time they were saying things are unfortunately going to get ugly if you don't pull your socks up, I went, I think it's time for me to go. So I did. However, if I had have known about my ADHD, like I'm saying, I might have been able to talk more openly about that with my bosses. I might have been able to talk about that with HR. I might have also, like I said, been able to understand that about myself and helped myself a little bit better. So yeah, I think regarding workplace, first of all, it's got to be pretty clear cut. If it's affecting something at work, definitely consider talking about it with your boss and or HR. You just don't know what they might be able to do to help you. All right. I'm going to get going. I think that's all I want to chat about tonight. Enjoy. Bye.